free-flowing conversation, but why don't you start with by telling us a little bit about how you got involved with the film? I was looking for a short film to show during this program, and I didn't have a clue as to what it was going to be. And I'm sitting talking to Vashi and Nicole at the poolside at the Trinidad Film Festival, and I'm telling them about this program today. And Nicole says, oh, I have a really good friend who just did this great film. And the funny thing is, I'd heard about the film. I went back and looked through all my emails. I had emails from like a long time ago. So it was all meant to be all this time.
So my background is I'm a community organizer. I went to Howard University. I got my degree in political science with HU with a focus on community development. So I've been working in nonprofit and community organizing for a long time. One of my producers on the film, a friend of mine from Oklahoma named Ashanti, was saying, you can't really tell that story without being willing to share your own story. And my story at the time just happened to be what was happening with my family and my grandmother. So it was a great way to tie together the legacy piece of inheritance as well as like the tangible financial piece of inheritance. So that culminated really organically into what you see today as Black Heirlooms short film. This was very hard for my family to be willing to participate in. And when we initially started filming, part of what really pushed a lot of them over the line was saying that, if our story is going to help somebody else, then, we're more willing to share. And so
I was going to say that this was a very brave project to take on because, as we know, African American families, we have so many secrets. Yes, last night we were here with Thomas Allen Harris's Through a Lens Darkly, and if you haven't seen that, if you're not familiar with that film, you must see that film. He also does an accompanying digital diaspora family reunion, and we did a little mini version here as well, where people get up and show their family photos and tell their stories. And the stories that come out are all so amazing, but it's always this thread of secrecy and deceit and things we don't know about each other. And so to get through your family to do that must have been difficult.
Well, I would say that everybody is on board. There are certain places and households that I cannot go. And the joke is amongst my cousins that, a lot of people's hatred for me is going to bring our family back together. So they may not agree on a lot, but they agree on how much they don't like Black Heirlooms. So the third generation G3 is what we call ourselves, which is my cousins have been instrumental in this project going forward, and this project being allowed, not even accepted, but I would say tolerated, is the fact that they are a link between some people who have chosen different sides in the project. The fact that my cousins and I are united and that bond is really hard to break is what makes this project possible. And the fact that they believe in it and they believe in me, and they, at some screenings you'll see there are more of us usually. I live with my cousins here in New York City, and our parents don't talk to each other. So all of us are very close. And so that has sort of become our version of family. And we sort of have just tabled a lot of the other issues that are happening on a higher level of generations. And we deal with that as we can. But that love and that confidence and that affirmation, I think, of the purpose of this project when it originated and the impact that it's having, a lot of that comes from my cousins. And it's not celebrated across the family, but they celebrate it, and that's what's important to me.
Absolutely. And then just talk a little bit more about this idea of meritocracy and inheritance. I understand, but I would love a little more description of that.
So we get a lot of feedback about the fact that there's only one white guy in the film and he's the expert, right? So this expert comes in to talk about, the Black family and how people feel about that. But Dr. Thomas Shapiro is actually the guru of the racial wealth gap. And he is the director for the Institute of Assets and Social Policy. He's written a number of books, and he's about to come out with his third one. So it was really a privilege for us to be able to sit down and film with him, especially as a first-time filmmaker. he didn't know me from Adam, and so for him to do that was really important. But when he's talking about a meritocracy, he's talking about this idea, especially in communities of color, that we push people to to work hard. And if you work hard, you will achieve based on how hard you work. So if you're not achieving, it's because you're not working hard enough. And if you are working hard, then you will gain, the effects of you working hard will be that you will gain what you're owed. Inheritance wipes all of that out, because there are a lot of people who just come into money, and so you don't have to work hard for anything. You get to go to the best schools. You know, nepotism means you get a good job because you know people. Everybody knows that a lot of your professional, achievements are based on sort of who you know and who will sponsor you or mentor you throughout your career. So that offsets a meritocracy, that offsets hard work. So if you don't have financial wealth or I guess like intellectual power or cultural power, social power. Social power is the phrase I'm looking for. If you don't have social power or wealth, you are at a deficit, because you're competing with the same people who have more opportunity because of the assets that they have. So Thomas Shapiro is just saying that those two things are in conflict with another in American society. So it is important within, especially communities of color in our households, that we do value financial wealth to a certain extent, because that helps to even a playing field that we're all playing on.
So I was just curious, because my stepmother died last year, and I took over as trustee of my family, and I know how hard that was. So, I don't know if you can talk about it, but what happened? Was there a trust established? Did like a family trust established? I mean, what kind of happened in terms of like the legal procedures?
The legal procedures. There were 2 different court hearings, and there's a trailer online that talks about. So I don't know a lot about the fundamentals of whatever happened with the second generation, because again, in terms of intergenerational communication, in a black household and in a Southern black household, no matter how old I am, I will always be a child. And so there's certain information that I will just never have access to, and through this experience, certain information that I don't really think that I want access to. And so what happened was my grandmother had a stroke, and she didn't have a power of attorney that everyone agreed upon or that was acknowledged by some court system. So my aunts and uncles went to court 2 different times to try and identify what to do with her care and her estate, who was going to be in control of that. So you hear Gabby talking about controlling the legacy. It really doesn't have, money is just like a tool to really flex your power. Like, I'm over this. Or my grandmother becomes a tool to flex your power. This is our legacy, and the person who controls this is one person, is the person who has the power. And for most of the screenings that we do like this, the common feedback really is that either somebody had that happen in their family, or they know somebody who had that happen to them. And so what came out happening in court is that my mother ended up being named the power of attorney. And so when Gabe is saying that he thinks that I'm going to have more inheritance than him, it's because my mother is the power of attorney and has the closest ties to my grandmother's estate, which he's entitled to feel that way. I don't necessarily see it that way, and that's not what's important to me. But
I loved your expression when he said that.
Everybody,
you were like, and it's very real too. I mean, I think that's something. It's an emotional thing, and I think that's the part that we can't disconnect from. It's the emotional part from the realistic part, the part that we're supposed to be, concerned about, and to afford our families this kind of continuation.
Hopefully from Black Heirlooms, what we're trying to drive home is that you should be having that conversation before it's urgent to have that conversation, because in that time your emotions do take over. And I don't think that my family has any deep hatred or malice for each other, but they were forced into a very emotional situation to make very important decisions at like the worst time possible, and a lot of people were just caught in the crossfire from that, and that's unfortunate. And so what we're trying to do as a third generation is sort of piece that back together, so the generations or our cousins or great nieces or whoever who come after that don't come into a broken family, but there is some representation of what we grew up in, which was this united force.
Amanda, thank you so much for your work.
Thank you very much.
And for taking up this cause. I mean, I think taking up this cause is is your life's work.
Yeah.
Because we don't have anyone who's doing that. And you're as a younger person doing it says a lot about you, says a lot about your family that you're trying to pull back together. And we wish you the best, and we're here to support you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for coming out. Thank you so much.